Hi, everyone. Welcome again. My name is Catherine Maller, and I am the Cultural Program Coordinator at the Goethe-Institut, New York. I'm excited to welcome you to the first session of Writing, Fragility, and Care, which is being led by writer Leora Fridman. These workshops are part of our series Apotheca, A Digital Third Place. The series combines German approaches to holistic wellness and balance with American theories of self-care and wellness outside of capitalism. Over the next 2 months in this series, we'll be interrogating the compulsion to work while creating a communal, non-commercial digital space that allows for relaxation and pleasure along with learning and exchange. Tonight, we're drawing on existing texts from contemporary writers on the differently abled and ill body in order to consider and write into our own reckonings with care and fragility. Our goal is to not only explore these concepts, but to create a safe space for creation, experimentation, and expression. Leora Fridman, our host, is a writer whose work is concerned with issues of identity, assimilation, care, ability, and embodiment. She's the author of My Fault, selected by Eileen Miles for the Cleveland State University Press First Book Prize, in addition to other books of prose, poetry, and translation. Her work appears or is forthcoming in The Millions, The New York Times, The Rumpus, Tricycle Magazine, and Triangle House, among others. She's taught online and in person in universities, homes and community organizations, and collaborates widely with artists, writers, and organizations. I'm going to hand it off now to Leora, but a quick note that I'll be monitoring the chat this evening. So if you have any questions, you can post them in there and I'll take care of you. Welcome, Leora.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you all for being here. I know we all have limited Zoom bandwidth, so thank you for spending some of yours with us tonight. My name is Leora Fridman, and I will be leading us today. My preferred pronouns are she and her. And I'm going to ask you to start with a brief writing prompt just to warm us up, and then we'll introduce ourselves after that. So you'll have a chance to say your name, your pronouns, and a few other things. But I want to recommend that when we do this warm-up prompt, that you turn off your video. I find that for me, one of the things that makes Zoom accessible to me is to not be staring into the screen at all times. So if you're not actually trying to have a conversation, sometimes it can just feel really supportive to like be there, but not with your video. I'm sure all of you know this. So if that feels good to you, feel free to turn off your video. And I'd like you to take out your writing implement, notebook, keyboard, whatever works for you. And I'd like you to begin by writing the following. I am inside of, and I'll put this prompt in the chat once we get started. So you're starting with I am inside of, and you're going to continue from there. So the idea here is that you try to just continue from where this takes you, allowing your thoughts to fill in at the end of that sentence. And this is a free write, so you're not editing, you're not worrying too much about what you're writing down. You won't be forced to share any of this. It can be fictional, non-fictional, fantastical, whatever comes to mind. So you're gonna start with I am inside of, and then just keep going. Even if one sentence is totally unrelated to the next, if you pause or get stuck, just start over again with I am inside of. And you'll have about 5 minutes for this, and I will speak again when it's time for you to start wrapping up, and then we'll do intros. Okay? So you'll have about 5 minutes for this starting now. So we have just about 1 more minute with this prompt, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to pause where you are for now. Just take like a few seconds to wrap up the sentence you're on or the idea that you're making. And if it feels accessible for you, please turn back on your videos. So again, for those of you who just joined us, my name is Leora. I'm really happy to see all of you. Those of you I know and those of you I don't know, those of you I know a little bit. And I just want to re-emphasize something Catherine said, which is that you don't need any experience for this time that we're sharing tonight. It's not about expertise. We're just trying things on together and trying on some ideas, trying on some writing. And if anything, any kind of prompt that I give you doesn't feel right for you or doesn't feel accessible for you, please feel free to do what works for you. So I'm just going to kind of frame a little bit of my own position here, what I'm thinking about, why we're talking about this all tonight, and then I'll give you some time to introduce each other, and then we'll read a little and write a little. So I started with this prompt about being inside of something, which is a prompt that I've been giving myself quite a bit during quarantine to kind of ground and to give myself a sense of what actually is structure in my life when things can feel confusing and unstructured. And I think that structures that that surround us, especially structures that feel caring, are so often invisible structures and are so often informed by structures of privilege and white supremacy. And so for that reason, I thought we'd start by writing a bit into this idea of containment, as you did. One of the things I did during early quarantine was I was reading this book called Poetics of Space, which some of you may know about. I was doing it through a reading group run by the poet Zoe Tuck. Zoe does really great reading groups, open on Zoom to anyone if you want to look her up. And this book, Poetics of Space, was something that was really interesting to read while I was contained in space. And many of us were in our houses because it talks a lot about containment and insideness and what happens to the imagination when we're inside. And I think I was also coming at this moment and that text from the perspective of a body who has also been stuck inside a lot with chronic illness. And so I'm really curious about when being stuck inside feels protective and when it feels stuck and when it feels maybe some combination of both of them. So that's just a little bit about me and kind of how I'm thinking about this right now. At this point, as much as we can, I'd like us to introduce ourselves. If you can raise your hand using the raise your hand feature in the in Zoom, then I think Catherine will unmute you, and I would ask you to just share your name, your gender pronoun, and just a sentence about why you're here. And if you'd like to share also anything about what you're inside of, one line maybe from your writing or just one thing that you're inside of. It can be from your writing that you just did or not. So yeah, so your name, gender pronoun, a sentence about what brings you here, and one thing that you're inside of. And feel free to raise your hand to speak. People don't want to, oh, you got that, yes, okay. Hi, Natasha.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Please go ahead.
So my name is Natasha Brawl and I'm from India. And it's been only 4 months that I'm in New York. So I'm quite new to this country and the city. And one thing that brings me to this workshop today is the name. It's just so incredible. Like the moment I saw the name of this program that you guys have on like fragility and self-care and writing, I was just with so much going around in this country, I just feel like that being in this country is like an act of revolution. Every day is like, it's like so much happening in one day. So I just feel like I'm a part of a living revolution called America, and that's what I'm inside of. And like, what am I inside of? I think a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, and maybe because what's happening outside, um, I'm just kind of like, I'm just going around with, oh, what is happening? Okay, what rule did Trump pass? What's going on? And this and that. So I guess I'm inside of a lot of chaos that's happening on the outside in the country. So, and I love how you articulated that, how, like, because sometimes when I'm happy, if I'm joyful, I'm not able to like contain the excitement. It's like all I'm inside of that, it's like I need to dance, I need to like give it out in one form or the other. And on the other hand, if you're inside of something which is negative, then it can also uh, kind of make you feel a little powerless. So I love how you articulated these two dualities that we live in, that like one moment we want to bring it out, and another time you just like, you don't know what to do. So it's just so crazy. Human mind is crazy.
Thank you, Natasha. Thanks for sharing. I also just wanted to say we have a few other hands raised, but if you prefer to share your intro in the chat, if that's easier for you, you can do that too.
Hi there, my name's Aiden. I go by she, her, calling in from San Diego, and I was writing about the sort of nest of boundaries that are drawn around cities, counties, states, countries, and I work on the Kumeyaay land, which is at UCSD, and so I've been thinking a lot about land acknowledgements and boundaries of land. And I'm here today because I love writing about the body, and Leora is a beautiful writer.
Thanks, Aiden. I see
Justin, you're up.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
No problem. Justin, you can go ahead.
Me. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Oh, yeah, I guess just be in silence on your screen if you can hear me. Hi, I'm Justin. I'm calling in from Oakland. And what am I inside of? I feel like I'm inside of something that's like kind of crumbling. Everything's kind of falling apart. So I'm kind of in that mode right now. And I feel really thankful for that space to think about that question. And I'm here because I love Leora's work, and I'm really excited to like share in this space with you. So I won't get to like take classes with you. So I'm excited to be in like this mode. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm from upstate New York. Go by she, her pronouns. And I guess I was drawn to this because I'm 28 and I'm recently unemployed, and I've been stuck in my head a lot and dealing with the validation that I got from working, and that validation being taken away, and finding validation through other means. That's it. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Sam. Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Rose, she, her, and I love a singular they. I'm so happy to be here with you all and to see some familiar faces. I decided to join because I'll take any opportunity to be under the guidance of Leora and how she thinks about writing and reading. And I am inside of a body. I think what your prompt brought up for me was how immediately I started thinking about the body like a text. And I think whenever things are sort of chaotic, as other people have said, or crumbling around me, you know, my tendency to like go to the literature and think about sort of what words can do, I think is a go-to source of solace. So yeah, thank you, Leora. And I lower my hand.
Thank you. Let's take maybe one or two more intros in voice, and if other people who are getting a chance want to introduce themselves in the chat, that's totally fine too.
Hello, this
Hi.
is Jenny, and there we go. I just lost visual. I am she, her, and I am coming to this workshop just having seen advertisement for it on Facebook. I've been writing for many, many years, and I'm a stage 4 cancer patient, and so have been kind of experiencing the pandemic as this funny extension of the fragility that I was already feeling in many ways, and vulnerability, and have been writing about that and interested in doing that in community with others.
Thank you. So I think maybe let's pause there for now. Sorry, we have a large group, so we won't not gonna all get to introduce ourselves, but please feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat if that feels good to you. So thank you for all these beautiful thoughts about chaos and intimacy and country and space. I'm sure you all have so much to say about this, and I think even just getting to hear from a little bit from each of you, it reminds me how much I think the core of the way that I think about this work is relational, and the way that I think about health is relational. I often say to people that I feel like I could spend my whole life and writing practice actually just like connecting things people said to me, or sometimes, you know, connecting different texts. And I know that for me, at least, I think sometimes that doesn't feel like it adds up to production or something that feels like creative production or academic production. And I think that given that our time together is situated around fragility and care, it makes me think a lot about how to make visible these sort of meeting points of people, of text, of exchange, and where they're broken or when they're breaking down. And I want to start introducing a few characters to our conversation that some of us may or may not be familiar with. I'm thinking of the work of many sick and disabled writers and artists who've been pointing to care, to relational labor, and how it keeps us alive. And I imagine many of you might have your own examples of people who are important to you. I'm going to put one in the chat, which is a link to an artist I really love named Romily Walden, who in a research project, she used Google Maps to develop an archive of sick, caregiving, and allied artists whose practices support Romily. So essentially the art piece itself is this archival Google map. And that is one project that of late has been really interesting to me. It's sort of thinking about what what if the archive is the project? What if the map of the people who care about us and who we care about is the production? So I'm just going to put that link out there. You're welcome to click on it now, or when it feels irrelevant to you. And I'm curious if any of you, especially those of you who maybe didn't get to introduce yourselves, if anyone wants to speak and say examples of people or artists or writers or thinkers who are doing work related to these themes that matter to you. So maybe let's just hear like 2 or 3. So again, that's people who are important to you, who think about care work or sickness or disability. And again, feel free to raise your hand using the raise your hand function. I'm seeing in the chat that some people can't find that. Feel free to put it in the chat, put your comment in the chat, and one of us will read it aloud if you can't find the raise your hand function. So again, that's just thinkers about these topics that have been important to you. I'm seeing in the chat, Adrienne Marie Brown. Leah Lakshmi Piepzna-Samarasinha, we're gonna read some of her work tonight. Park MacArthur's project, Carried Held, and Emily Barker. Awesome. Yeah, and if people want to put links into the chat, we can share those out as well. Anna, thanks for your introduction in the chat as well. Yeah, great. So I'm sure we're all tired of hearing this right now, but one of the things that I think a lot about with COVID is its capacity to make more visible these structures. So make more visible the structures that hold us, that care for us, whether it's the so-called essential workers or the privilege that encases us or doesn't, or the family or friends checking in on us to see how we're feeling, how we're going to pay rent, what we're thinking about, what we might cook for dinner. All of these kinds of small interactions, I think, have become, at least for me, a lot more visible. So I want to take a little chunk of time for another short exercise that's kind of building on our opening prompt. And I'd like you to just take 2 minutes this time to make a list of things that are holding you. So it could be a continuation of that first prompt, the first writing that you did, which was what am I inside of right now? But thinking about that map I sent out, which is this map of people who are holding one person's life. So I want you to just make a list of things that are holding you right now. If that feels like text, that's great. If you want to make a map of your own on a page or on a Google map, that's great. Although you won't have a ton of time. So just give yourself a little time to start listing things that are holding you right now. And I'm going to put this prompt in the chat, and then we'll take about 2 minutes to work on it. take one more minute with this, noticing what happens as you start kind of listing out what's holding you, what structures are holding you. So start wrapping up where you are right now. I know that was a quick one, but as with any of these, if any of these prompts is especially compelling for you, or you feel like you have a lot you could do with it, please obviously feel free to hold on and come back to it. Yeah, I'm curious if anyone would like to share like a sentence or two about what you notice as you begin to frame things that way, as you begin to think about what are the structures, what are the things holding you. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share what that was like for you. Yes, Justin.
I'll share something quick, not like specifically, but just maybe to get things started. I think one thing I noticed when I was thinking about what was holding me was how it had different kind of, just the different meanings of it. Like at first it was like, oh, these structures that are like supporting me. And then I was also feeling like what's holding me back, or like what's holding on to me. I don't know. So it like, maybe it's just also my state of mind or whatever, but it like twisted in and out of that a lot. Like I was like, oh, that's holding me. And like, oh, I'm holding on to that. I don't know. Like it was a good, yeah, anyways, I just noticed that it didn't have like one straightforward meaning. So it's interesting to explore that and try to like keep going into it. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Natasha asked this great question in the chat. Do we have to think in terms of holding us back or holding our attention? So the many different ramifications of that word start feeding us too. Yes, Scarlett's got a great comment in the chat about the broad. What things keep us connected to ourselves or held together or held in place. So these are all ways of thinking about that. Yeah. Great. So, I mean, I think we're going to do a little reading together, but I think I just want to say as you begin writing into these structures, and as many of you have already shared different embodied experiences that bring you to this time that we have together tonight, I just wanted to say that I think there's a lot of really exciting and fruitful territory here. And I think for me, it's a great time to be thinking about how the experience of sick or of just / human bodies as both often entirely overwhelming to the structures of the medical industrial complex, as we're seeing in some places right now, and sometimes overwhelming to the cycles of production and consumption. But at the same time, I think one of the things that happens when we start to think about these themes in writing is that we can also see these experiences as held in a really different kind of structure. So one way that I think about held is in creative structure, in creative and writing practices that maybe really make us held inside of something, while at the same time allowing for this kind of seepage and porousness that you all are even talking about with the multiple meanings of the word held. So it's both a structure that makes us feel safe and also something that can really reverberate. And I also just meant to say, meant to mention earlier, because a lot of you brought out the word fragile as you were talking about what brought you to this this time together. And it's interesting, I titled this course a few months ago using that term, and I think right now it feels so relevant in terms of the context of the term white fragility, which has been also cycling around a lot. And I think we might bring that up here too, where it feels relevant, and for those of you to whom it feels relevant. And I think I sometimes wonder whether those of us with more exposure to health fragility might actually become more sturdy when it comes to politics, simply because we have sometimes more practice taking in a variety of non-normative experiences. This is, of course, not always the case, but I think sometimes illness can also make us more shut off. But I think that's another, I wanted to also just welcome that reverberation of the word fragility too. Okay, so let's just take a breath together and maybe look away from the screen for a moment, which is really important practice when we're on Zoom calls that are longer than 15 minutes. So you just focus on your eyes on a wall, a window, a point of light in your room, and just take a full breath. So we're going to read together for a bit from Leah Lakshmi's book, Care Work, which one of you mentioned in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand like this if you know that book. I'm going to send a link to a chapter right into the chat, and I'd like you to click on it so that we can all read it aloud together. So just take a minute to click on that link. You can tell me if it's problematic, not if it's problematic, but if you're having a problem with the link, if it's a problematic link in the technical sense. And so what we're going to do, we're going to read this piece out aloud, and I want to just try it a little bit more chaotically because I've been really enjoying this practice of reading aloud at some events and with some friends, where we just kind of like try to take turns, all unmuted, try to take turns reading a paragraph at a time. So I'm going to ask you, if you feel like reading, to just jump in. I'm going to, are you all having trouble? Some people having trouble, sorry, interrupting myself, getting the link? You need a Dropbox account? Okay, so what I'm going to do, sorry to interrupt myself. Okay, you can direct download. Thanks, Annie. If you can download the file instead of just reading off the link, that would be great. And okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then if you would like to read it, I'd like you to just try to jump in and take a turn. If you speak over someone, just, back off. We'll try to figure it out. It's not too many paragraphs, but it can be kind of fun to just try this together. So let's take like 10 more seconds to get into the link. And you should be seeing in front of you Print's Chronic Pain and Living to Get Old, which is a chapter from Care Work. And I'm going to read this first paragraph. And then Catherine, if you could just unmute everyone for now. Okay. The reports started to trickle in. They were conflicting, but they still painted a picture. Prince lived with chronic pain for years from all that dancing in high heels and jumping off stages. His knees hurt so bad all the time. He'd had a hip replacement, or he needed a hip replacement, but his religion didn't allow him to do it. Prince had flu that turned into walking pneumonia for 3 weeks of tour, and he canceled some shows but not others, and he was on a lot of planes. In an Entertainment Tonight article that came out right after his passing in 2016, his longtime friend and collaborator, Sheila E., said he was in pain all the time, but he was a performer.
I had walking pneumonia last week, my second pneumonia this year. I still have it as I am writing this. And right after I went to urgent care with shortness of breath and got the diagnosis, after telling my partner I was just fine for days, I was thinking about still getting on a plane to LA with pneumonia on 3 days of antibiotics because the doctor said it should be just fine. I listened to my body, but I had to fight to do so. My sick and disabled friends had to say no when I asked if maybe, possibly it was okay for me to fly. After all, it was just a mild pneumonia and just a little flight. When I conceded that they were right, I negotiated with the folks offering me the gig while sitting in a chair in the Rite Aid pharmacy waiting area, waiting for my antibiotics to be filled, asking if they'd be open to me doing the talk on Skype so I could be at home, not on a plane and a shuttle and a hotel. And I still wished I could be there in person. I love access. I am grateful for Skype, and I know what it means to still want to be there in the flesh.
I am very clear I am nowhere near Prince's level of fame, talent, or world domination, his place in the world and what he meant to folks. But I'm a writer who goes on tour, and his death made me think about some things about illness, pain, and being a performer.
Charlotte, I think you're muted.
Weird. Okay. So here's what I've got. To me, it feels like a performance. Writing and art can last forever in the minds of those who witness it. And it's also fragile and easily forgotten, especially if you are a queer trans artist of color, or a disabled queer trans artist of color, or an artist coming from working class or poor, a rural artist, or all of the above. I feel like if I stop, everyone will forget about me in 5 minutes. And this doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from seeing Black and brown queer artists I consider my friends and comrades, and also mentors, people a little older than me, people I look up to and still do, who shared their skills of how to book a show, how to write a grant, how to believe in yourself as a QTBIPOC artist. Artists who maybe hit a rough patch where a thing called life was happening a little more than usual, or just changed the kind of work they were doing or how much they were doing it. And now folks a little younger than me say, who? When their names come up. The laws of perpetual performance motion, as I've experienced them, dictate that you've gotta just keep saying yes to people who want you to come to perform or write or do something. Because if you say no, the wheels will stop and it's all over. Maybe, probably, this feels different to folks who are artists who have access to wealth or a trust fund. But for most of the rest of us, it feels really different. The model we were taught is to never stop.
I know the feeling of panic when the 3 gigs I was counting on for fall 2014 all fell through and I was really short on money and scared. I know the hustle, the scramble to get money together, to email and follow up. I know all the ways we are superheroes, what it feels like to perform right after puking or having a panic attack and making it shine anyway. I know the ups and downs and the waiting for the check to show up. I know the feeling of loving what you can do and having adrenaline carry you. I know the feeling of a post-tour crash after you are home safe in your bed and your body knows it is safe to finally get sick, and you get sick and sick and sick. I know the feeling of fighting to stay relevant and known, not because you want to be famous, but because if people know your work, you'll get work and your work might reach folks. If not, you won't, and it won't. I know the feeling of loving tour, of feeling blessed to be able to travel around and do what you love for folks. And I know the feeling that you are lucky to be able to do your work and you just have to keep going and going because this is not a 9-to-5 job. So all of this is worth it, right?
There's a particular kind of disabled person who for years was broke and sick and unable to leave my neighborhood much, let alone the city. Touring was both something other working class artists explained to me as a way of making a living that would work with the peaks and crashes of a chronically ill body who had fatigue weeks and energy weeks, where you could make a chunk of money and then live frugally off it when you were sick or tired. And something that felt like and is an immense privilege that many people don't get to do for lots of reasons, including that I'm a walkie, and it's easier for me to get on buses and trains and planes than many of my friends and comrades who use adaptive devices that public transportation is too ableist to accommodate. I also often default to feeling like no matter how hard things are, I don't have my mom's life. I'm not a working class woman in a shitty marriage with 2 jobs, rarely leaving her Rust Belt city, let alone flying all across the country. I'm lucky as hell, I got no reason to complain.
And there is truth to all that. What is also true is all the days you work sick and in pain, all the invisibilized labor you do to lie down before and after, to take pain meds and stretch and carry traditional Chinese medicine tea pills with you to ward off or mitigate the sick, to take care of the sick and pain that happens on the road and after the road, the inner and outer voices and archetypes common in performance culture that say you are lucky to do what you do, that the show must go on, that say you are lucky to do what you do, the show must go on, that you power through illness, that canceling means you're a diva or unreliable or weak, that to be open about illness means people will think twice about booking you and think you are no longer at the peak of your career.
What is true for me past 40 is realizing that the ways I was able to push myself, even as a chronically ill artist, to take red eyes and buses and long travel days to shows and workshops and gigs in my 30s are less possible in my 40s.
Many folks I know increasingly talk a lot about sustainability, but I know few who have actually figured out how to do it all the way. That's not our fault. It's ableist capitalism's. We are all trying to survive the best we can, and there are a few working artist workshops, fewer working disabled artist workshops, and the reality that it certainly feels like not everyone can make any kind of living as an artist. We are used to doing a lot on a little as a working class QTB IPOC artist model of our strengths. We don't have a model of touring that includes disability and illness, canceling and rescheduling, that seems like something other than a luxury or even possible. This often comes from a place of being cash poor, but it's also true that artists with access to more money don't feel like it's possible to cancel or slow down either.
When Sins Invalid bumped our big October 2010 show to April 2011, after a collective member had 3 big health issues come up, it was both unprecedented, something no one in performance worlds I know had seen done, and something we deliberately did as a disability justice collective committed to leaving no one behind and centering our bodies as they were. I hope it's made other groups start to claim how to make performances happen, where canceling or rescheduling isn't an unforeseen disaster or an impossibility, but something we can plan for.
I don't have a magical solution, but I know that as I write this, I'm 41, a performer and writer, and on my second pneumonia in 2 months, watching a lot of our beloved artists, Prince, so much among them, but also Ayanka Miracle, Mohawk trans elder, writer and performer artist, who meant so much to me and so many folks in communities I'm part of, who just passed from liver cancer as I finished this piece, become ancestors in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And I am committed to figuring out together how we can remake performance culture's expectations and figure out our own disabled and chronically ill performance ideas that allow our body minds to thrive. I want us to live to get old.
Thank you, everyone. So I know that this piece it weirdly feels outdated in the sense of touring and Skype being like a magical idea that people had never thought of before. But I wanted to share it because I think it's important to make visible the ways that have only encountered recently, or have only started to use regularly recently. And looking at this text, I think might help us think how we might continue to be creative under increasingly unknown conditions. I also wanted to specifically draw our attention to the paragraph starting, "and there is truth to all that." So let's just look at that really briefly here. It says, "and there is truth to all that. What is also true is all the days you work sick and in pain, and all the invisibilized labor you do to lie down before and after, to take pain meds and stretch and carry traditional Chinese medicine, etc., etc." It continues from there. So we're going to try something on kind of for our next prompt that comes from that paragraph. So again, pull out your writing implement, notebook, voice recorder, keyboard, document, whatever works for you. And I'm going to use the verb write here, but feel free to do whatever you like. If you want to paint or you want to do something else, that's fine too. And I'd like you to write, coming off of this paragraph here, I'd like you to write a list of tasks or jobs or requirements that allow you to function. So you can start with the phrase, "to keep going, I need blank." Or you can write, "to keep going, they need blank," if writing in a different pronoun is better for you. If it's helpful, you can move through your body, as in listing, "to keep my eyes going, I need coffee and eye drops. To keep my sinuses going, I need," or you can move through your house listing, "to keep my bathroom going, I need X." So I'd like you to just keep going for about 10 minutes we'll have. Be as specific as possible, and again, just keep writing the whole time. Feel free to follow associative threads, see where they take you. If the purely realistic feels inaccessible or not right for you, you can also try something speculative. Imagine what you consider ideal or totally unrealistic access needs, things that you would need to keep going. Like make requests for needs you couldn't ever imagine vocalizing. So again, I'm going to put what I just said in the chat, and I'll warn you when we're close to 10 minutes. Again, I recommend you turn off your video while you're writing if that feels good for you. So I just want to let you know we're about halfway through. We have about 5 minutes left with this prompt. So we have about a minute left with this prompt. So you might want to start wrapping up your thoughts for now. And as you're wrapping up, I want you to prepare to finish this piece of writing with a question. So by asking a question in the writing. So it should be a question you're open to other people seeing, because you're going to put this question in the chat. Ideally, it's a question about these needs that you've been writing about, aspirational accessibility or your home space or otherwise. I mean, really, it could be just any genuine question that you have. So ending this piece of writing by coming up with a question, and as you're ready, put that question in the chat and turn your video back on if you like. So go ahead and put that question in the chat once you formulate it.
Can you describe what the question is related to again, exactly?
Yeah, sure. So really any question that you have that comes out of what you were writing.
Okay.
So it could be about access needs, it could be about your home space, it could be unrelated if you ended up somewhere else. A question that you're willing for someone else to see. And as we're putting the questions in the chat, I'm curious if anyone would like to share just how that was for you, how it felt to write about what you need in order to continue. I think you can all unmute yourselves at this point. So feel free to unmute yourself and speak if you'd like, or you can put it in the chat too. Beautiful questions. Thank you for these. Oh, beautiful. So feel free to wrap up putting your question in the chat. And then if anyone wants to unmute themselves and share how that went for them this last writing period that we had.
Can I shoot?
I think that I started off writing about things that I need that were physical, and then I kind of went to emotional and mental things. And just like the uncertainty of the world right now. And tying it back to like the reading we did, I just am like, none of the things I'm asking for is really that much. It's kind of just basic human needs, and I'm not that unusual for having them, I guess, or wanting them.
Other thoughts about how that was for you? And feel free to turn your video back on if you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay.
Will these questions be available to share like in a follow-up?
Yeah, so we're going to do a little closing activity with these questions right now, but yes, we will. I think we're going to save the chat as part of the recording, so you'll have that as well.
I think for me, one thing I felt coming up a lot as I was writing is just, I have it so ingrained from growing up that I shouldn't need too much, like just that idea. So I feel like writing it was kind of, I would catch myself judging myself a lot for things and, you know, thinking, is that really a need? Am I allowed? Just like need feels like a very strong word. Like I don't feel entirely comfortable using, like saying I need this. So something I noticed.
That's a great, I really appreciate that observation. And it could be interesting to try this exercise with maybe a different verb, like want or desire or whatever verb feels maybe more comfortable, although it might be cool to just try it on. Yeah. So we're gonna close. Our final activity for tonight is a prompt that comes from a performance that I really love called the Fatigued Compassionate Oracle. Raise your hand just in your Zoom chat if you know about this performance. Okay, so the Fatigued Compassionate Oracle, very quickly, is a performance in which anyone in the public submits sincerely, genuinely felt questions to the oracle. And the oracle, which is made up of a group of chronically ill and disabled artists, takes time to answer these questions, and that's the performance. And the responses of the oracle sort of are kind of halfway between an advice column and a speculative fiction. And they don't rely on a form of kind of individual expertise. So what we're going to do for this last exercise tonight is you're going to select a question from the chat that you're willing to try on answering. So take a minute to look over those questions. You're not going to write back to that person, so you don't really have to worry about any of the privacy dynamics of direct dialogue, but just you're choosing a question that you feel like would be one that you're interested in answering. And once you do that, you're going to start a letter with dear blank, if the person's name is there. And however it feels best for you, I want you to try to answer this question in a letter. So try not to think of this as coming from any kind of expertise, but think of it just in responding in whatever way is best available to you right now, that your present state is enough expertise. You can share needs of your own or instructions. If you run out of ideas, you can again always associate. You can share things you've read or your own experience. You can relate, you can differentiate. You can ask questions of your own. Just consider yourself to be someone who knows enough to answer this question. Again, you're not going to actually give this letter back, at least not within the structure of our session. So allow yourself to just go unedited and move beyond what you're projecting or what you think this person might need from you. So we'll do that for about 10 minutes. If you start to get stuck, read the question again and just start again to your blank. You can also try, if you're feeling stuck, putting your body in a different position, literally or physically, sort of changing the expression of your face and seeing what expertise that brings up for you. Okay, so I'll put this prompt in the chat and we'll have about 10 minutes to respond to the question. So we have about 5 minutes left with this prompt. Again, feel free to look in the chat for the ideas about what to do if you get stuck and ways to start over. So we have about 1 minute left here. So you might want to start wrapping up where you are for now or leaving yourself notes for the future. So start coming back as you're ready and feel free to turn your video back on. And as I said before, feel free to, continue any of these prompts that feel exciting for you or that felt juicy, like you want a little more time. And yeah, before we close, I'm curious if anyone would like to share how that prompt was for them, how it was to answer someone else, how it was to assume expertise, or if you'd like, you can share a line or two that you liked from what you wrote, but no pressure. And Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and speak, or you can also put it in the chat.
Hi, I'd like to just read my piece. It's really small.
Go for it.
Can I stop without falling apart? It's better to stop and stop often. Make stopping the space that holds you together. Make stopping the space that restores you. And if you have wrapped your identity up in the hurry up, keep busy, damn it, dynamic, and if it's necessary to fall apart, spinning plates crashing down for the sake of joy, of stopping and getting to know yourself, fear arrested, so be it.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I think the phrase assuming expertise is something a lot of us aren't used to hearing about ourselves. And Kim, thank you for answering my question. That was what I always ask myself because I'm always in that stay busy mentality. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I can share something. I think I chose a question that like I resonated with, like, cause I felt like it was also like something I was asking myself. And then I found myself getting into the mode of like, of giving advice and like that special mode of being like, you, not necessarily like you can do it, but just like kind of sharing my experiences in these things and totally like kind of, I don't know how to say, like, because I was resonating with the question, I was kind of answering my own question at the same time. And I don't know, it was really like, I don't know, it was really interesting to see myself kind of like step outside of myself and kind of take on this like care voice, you know, where I was like, I'm sending all this care to you, it's gonna be okay, like, or whatever, you know, like, and then I was like, oh yeah, I needed that too, you know, I don't know, I kind of like felt that. So I was reminded that this capacity to like hear someone's authentic question and be like, oh my God, buddy, yes, like we're all here, you know, like, so it was a nice reminder also to myself to remember that too.
Okay, I can share.
It's a little quiet. Can you speak up a little bit?
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You asked, where do we go from here? Where do we begin? You begin in the present moment. You ground yourself in the now. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Your legs are strong. They hold you up. They allow you to move forward. Take a step into the unknown. Allow your fear to go with you, but don't allow your fear to conquer you. Look back at the obstacles you have faced in the past, all the obstacles you have overcome. You are strong, you are resilient, you are supported. The earth is your friend, the air is your friend, trees and flowers are your friends.
Thank you. Let's take maybe one more reflection for tonight.
I can share. Dear, I will not take the name, but yeah. So this
I'm
question,
having a little bit of trouble hearing you. If you can maybe get a little closer to your mic, yeah.
Yeah. So this question asked me many things which I don't know. What is the meaning of hopeful? I guess I have forget the being human with simple life. What is there to be of hopeful about in this world? I always thought that I can manage things my own, but somehow I am unable to do that. This question is bothering me a lot as my physical status made me think more and stopped my restriction, conviction to be a normal being. I may not able to manage my regular deeds often. I do hope I will bring to my life, my normal life.
Thank you. We're gonna pause the sharing there for tonight. Thank you so much for writing and listening and responding to one another today. Yeah, I hope that the things we've done together, there's something in there that piques your interest in terms of your own writing and thinking, and also that you feel encouraged that great imagination is necessary when we consider care and accessibility. And when we write in letter form, as we just did, it's both magical and speculative in a sense, because we're addressing someone who isn't likely there in front of us right now, and most of us don't know each other. So magic is sometimes necessary in these moments in order to help hold us, and magical and creative objectives can also be very, very practical, as I think some of us are seeing here too. So we'll meet again on Thursday with a similar format, some early prompt writing, and then a couple longer sessions of writing with a little bit of reading in the middle to inform our writing. I think it's the same Zoom link. Catherine can confirm that. Yes, it is. And I've said this before, but if you can't come to both sessions, it's fine. They'll work independently, but they also will build on one another. So if you were here tonight and you can join us on Thursday, I think would serve you. I would love to have you. And I'm wishing you all the most ease you can have until then. I think I'll hang out here a few minutes longer if anyone has questions, just like a minute or two, but I think that will be it for tonight. Thank you so much.